Mhm.
We are here today on the Lily Channel with one of my favorite new people, Stephen Shaner, who is part of the Power Talk seminars. That actually takes care of one of the questions I was going to ask you to tell people, how did we meet? But it's a networking group. Now, Stephen, where are you? You're in Tennessee?
Correct. I'm in Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee. It's about an
Oh,
hour and
gosh.
40 minutes northeast of Nashville, about 3 miles from the Kentucky border.
You used to live in Minnesota, didn't you?
I've lived in 17 different states, four of them more than once. But I lived in the Twin Cities, and then when my company transferred me up to work in Duluth, I lived in Superior, Wisconsin. And then when I retired, we moved down here.
Okay, that explains it. I was going to say, what compelled you to leave this fine state? Other than the fact that you're freezing. Gosh, now I understand. I was going
Mhm.
to say, I figured it was time to give you some airtime because, for my audience, you're all looking at a man who is super generous with his time and with his talent and with his podcast. You're always asking people what it is about their work that they love. If I remember right, it's time to give you some airtime. No, this is ridiculous. Now, I can't remember how you even heard about Power Talk seminars because that's how we met.
We met through Power Talk. I've known Vitali and Roman for many, many, many years in the
Mhm.
Toastmasters organization.
Ah,
When I
okay.
was district governor, Vitalia was one of my area governor cook trainers, along with Diane Windyland.
Mm.
We worked together. And then Roman was one of my area governors. So I've known
Ah,
each other for a time. And then we actually did some programs together. One was Laugh, Lead, Learn. Then we did one called Sit Down, Shut Up, and Listen. And then we did several that was called Off the Wall. So we've known each other for a long time. And it was through them that this whole concept of the Attitude Chiropractor was born. So I, I
okay.
we've been friends for a long time.
And the funny thing is, I made an episode about you, thanking you for just a great time on the networking, I don't know, networking meeting with Power Talk. Must have been, it might have been 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's
And
been a while.
I thought you, since I didn't hear everything that you said at the time, I thought you were an actual chiropractor. And so I'm thinking, okay, yeah, and I understand I'm not the only one on LinkedIn who seems to think that's
Almost every day, I get a connection from somebody telling me how they can bring me more patients and improve my chiropractor practice and things like that. It's like, read my page.
yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that is pretty dang clever. I mean, I'm trying to remember what made you start the podcast.
Well, when COVID hit, being a speaker and also a professional magician, those opportunities really dried up from an in-person standpoint. So while I was doing some things, on Zoom, especially from the speaking side, it's very difficult to pair magic up with Zoom. It can be done, but magic is so interactive with people. You bring
Yeah.
people up to help say so. So I was looking for something else to do, and I researched podcasting for a little over a year
Wow.
before I decided to jump in. And when I did, it's been fabulous. It's such a great environment to learn from other people.
It
I'm
is.
an expert in attitude. I wrote a book on attitude, but
Yeah, you
there are other
did.
people who do attitude differently than I do. And I'm learning from them. So all these guests that I have on, I get a wonderful opportunity to learn new skills, learn new ideas, and learn their passions and how they gain those passions. And it's just been a joy. It's been a lot of fun.
It must be a big high. I mean, it's when you love what you do, then it just transfers to the next person. And I mean, I love hearing what business owners do is one of my things, or what people are doing to improve the environment, so on. What is it's the most challenging aspect of doing podcasts? One of the most.
The most challenging for me was, and the reason I took a year is because, like I said, I did a lot of research, is there's a lot of decisions that need to be made that you need to
Mhm.
make prior to getting started. How are you going to record? How are you going to edit? Are you going to use music? How often are you going to do it? What's the theme? What's your niche? All these questions. You don't want to start a podcast and try and figure that out. You want to get quite a bit of those decisions made in advance and then get started. So that was really the toughest part. And then at the beginning, being brand new at this, it took me a long time to edit a podcast show,
Oh
upwards
gosh.
of 6 hours. Now I can edit a podcast show in less than 45 minutes. So you
Wow.
learn the tools that you're using.
Hmm.
So there's those types of things. And then it's finding guests. At first, it was really slow. In fact, at the beginning, you'll see I have quite a few episodes where I'm by myself just because I didn't have a guest for that particular week.
Hmm.
Now
You've
people are
got a
coming to
wait
me.
list.
Yeah, I've got a huge list, and right now I've got enough recorded to get me through the end of March, and
Okay.
I have enough appointments now to record to get me through the end of June. So
Okay.
I'm way ahead now. So things have gotten a lot easier as I've gone along. But at the beginning, that was really tough stuff, making those decisions, and I had to change a few. I had decided to go one way, but once I get into it, it's like, nope, that's not working. I'll do something different. But it's been a joy, just the learning and all the wonderful people such as yourself. You were a guest on the
Oh,
podcast and
yes, it
just
was
seeing
fun. It was,
and that
I
is
think, my very first podcast interview. And it's tough to get an interview. It is, I hadn't researched it until I had a client who needed an interview, and I thought a lot of them that are listed on Bard or Ask Bard, the artificial intelligence guy, either they're inaccurate or they're dead, like they quit. And
yeah.
so,
I've been doing a lot of work with podcastguest.com. So
oh,
I'm
that's
signed up
right.
with them, and they send me an email every week with a list of people that are looking to be on a podcast. And most are not a fit, but maybe about one a week. It's like, yeah, that would fit for me. So I just send them a little email through their system, basically saying I'd
Okay.
be interested in on, and probably about 75% of the people I contact reach out and say, yeah, I'd love to be on your podcast. So that helps. And then I've got another organization called the Expert Bookers. They found me and they are sending me
Cool.
guests all the time. And some are a good fit, some aren't, and that's fine. So,
What makes one a bad fit
well,
or a
some
good fit?
people, well, so give me an example. I got one, and the only thing he put was he's a Jedi Master.
Okay. So you
That
don't
was
know
the
whether
only,
he likes being a Jedi Master or
I don't know what that means. And maybe at some point I'll have a discovery call and find out more. But then there are people that are like, I've worked with people that were just abused or whatever, and here's how I help them, and they've got a compelling story to tell, and that's what I'm looking for.
okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
You know,
It's do you think have you ever experimented with a YouTube channel?
I haven't. I've been thinking about it.
Okay.
I hear a lot of great things about it, and when I was doing the research, what I was finding articles on reads is a lot of people just don't have time to sit down and watch a YouTube channel all the time. Whereas with a podcast, and like a podcast, they can listen to that, off of their phone while they're driving, whatever it may be. And a lot more people have more time for the podcast than they do the YouTube. But I think there's value in all of those.
Yeah,
So I do spend a lot of time watching YouTube.
I
My
do
wife and
too.
I, yeah, my wife and I do that all the time. But again, from what the research I did, what I was reading is not a lot of people do have that kind of time. They're so busy, with jobs and kids and hobbies and everything
Yeah.
else.
It's funny you should say that because that's one thing I've been trying to educate other content creators on is that if you communicate in a certain way, then you can expand your market, so to speak, that those who only listen will still benefit. So I am trying more often to say, okay, I'm holding up a book that looks like XYZ in case you're listening and not watching, just
Sure.
describing the environment more. I
Yeah.
mean, I do a lot of errands while I'm listening to a language channel. I don't have to see them.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah. Yeah, so here, and that's okay. But if you got the time, do them all. Do a blog, do a podcast, do the
oh my,
YouTube.
ugh.
Yeah. And I got to say, the YouTube things that I watch, I enjoy, and I learn from them, and I'm grateful that I have the time to do that.
Now, I don't think I heard what got you into magic.
Oh, it wasn't one of those things that I said when I grew up, I want to be a magician. I didn't get into magic until I was almost 29, and
Huh.
I was living in San Diego. I was working as an air traffic controller in San Diego at the time. Went to Disneyland, visited the magic shop, and I bought a trick. Did that, and then a little while
You
later
said you did what was in
in Disneyland, they have a magic shop in Disneyland.
okay.
And so I went in there and I bought a trick, took it home, played with it. And it was fun. And then the local magic shop down in San Diego was offering I think it was a 5-week class, one night a week on magic. So I took that.
Mm.
Shortly after that, I moved to Florida, and I kind of got teamed up with a guy where I was working at General Electric, and there was a guy there. He was elderly, but he was a magician, and we started doing shows together. And he was just wonderful, just absolutely wonderful. And we had so much fun. We were doing primarily nursing homes and those types of places, which was great for me because I was getting in front of an audience, trying things.
Sure.
And we just go do it, I'd do 20 minutes, he'd do 20 minutes, and they were so appreciative, and it was so much fun.
Oh
Then
yeah.
I was taking a correspondence course from the Chavez College of Magic, and I ended up applying to them and was accepted. So I was in Florida now, Magic College in LA. So I went from San Diego to Florida back to LA and went to Magic College. And then I
Magic.
performed
I
at the
love it.
I know I performed at the Magic Castle in Hollywood for a few years, and just I did that full time for a while, and
Wow.
then just got back into computers and started computer work again, and continued to do the magic. But it's more fun than doing it for a living, if you know what I mean.
I love it that I didn't even think about you. You go into the store and you buy a trick. It
Yeah,
sounds different from what I thought that. I know what turning tricks means, but it's not that.
yeah.
Wow,
So but that's kind of that story, and I've
that
been
is
doing
cool.
magic now for over 40 years, and it's been a blast. And
Wow.
I still around here, especially, there's a lot of nursing homes and assisted living facilities, so
Okay.
I go there as often as I can and just entertain those people, and they're wonderful.
You know which one I like is when the person takes a quarter out from their head or something like that, and suddenly, that one's probably pretty simple, I'm guessing.
It is for me, but I do that. I'll run into a mom and a child in the grocery store, and I'll look over at the kid and say, "Hey, you ever seen an invisible hand?" And I'm like, "No." So I'll take a coin and make it disappear in my invisible hand. So it's a lot of fun.
Is it, and I can't remember what you said about what your original line of work was.
Done a lot of
Or
different things.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
a
yeah.
lot of different things, but primarily computers. I worked at the Nevada test site in Area 51 for about 5.5 years doing computer work. And then when I was in Minneapolis, I was doing computer work. Probably familiar with Health Partners.
Yeah.
And yeah, I worked for them for 20 years and retired from there. But they asked me to relocate up to Duluth. They opened a regional technology center up in Duluth, and I moved up there and managed that facility, got that facility started, managed
Oh
that
geez.
facility 14 and a half years, and then retired in 2019.
And you worked with computers like computer scientist or
I have two Oracle certifications. If you know what that is, Oracle is a programming language, so I
yeah.
primarily
Hmm.
computer programming, and I started out doing web programming
Okay.
in
Ooh,
Oracle,
boy.
and then transferred to the data warehouse team, and then I managed that team up in Duluth.
Okay. Oh my gosh. So that's a nice uh, sounds totally different. I mean, I don't know enough about magic to know. I mean, I suppose it is a system in itself and you have to learn systems.
Yeah, a
And they
lot to
seem
it.
to produce magic because you don't, unless you're a computer scientist, you wouldn't know what's inside the computer and what makes things work. So now, how did you and your wife meet?
In 1980, I was working as a full-time firefighter here in Tucson,
Mm,
and she was working in the medical surgical unit at one of the hospitals, and we both needed to be EMT trained, and we met in EMT class. That was in
wow.
1980. I'd asked her out; she wasn't interested. And later that year in the fall, my fire department was having a fun day out and challenged one of the ambulance companies to a softball game. So I invited her, and she came
Mm,
along, and we started dating. And then 1981, we got married. So
that is a
mm,
cool story.
yeah, so it took a while, but we got there, and we've been together ever since.
She was
And
playing hard to get.
she was. I wanted to talk to her about that.
That is, those are seriously interesting skills with an EMT. Oh my gosh. I hats off to EMTs. I don't know that I could do it. Now, and also, you did get a few of these questions beforehand, but if so, you have a bunch of interests, and if you were to pick one to do for an entire weekend, I mean, not necessarily nonstop, but most of the weekend, can you think of one that you'd be interested enough to do that long?
I can. I can think of a couple, maybe golf,
Hmm,
although, but I think more than that, it would be ham radio.
ham radio.
We frequently go out into the field and we take whatever ham radio equipment we have. We make our own antennas, and we even make our own little portable radios. And we go out and we put the antenna up in the tree, and we run off of batteries or
Yeah.
generators. We just make as many contacts as we can around the world. We have two official days that we do, or days we do that. One is called the ARL Field Day. That's the third weekend in June. So it's a Saturday and Sunday, and we
Okay.
go out to one of the parks. So we've got a local club here. We got one of the parks. We set up our equipment, and at 1 o'clock on Saturday we start. We try and make as many contacts as we can until 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon. So it's a 24-hour event,
What
and then
is
we have
making contacts for what?
on ham radio. We contact as many people as we can overall. So this is a worldwide event that goes all over the world, and all these ham radio operators go out into the field with no commercial power, and we just run off batteries, generators, solar, and we just contact and make as many people as contact with as many people as we can around the world, and it's a blast. And
So,
then
hmm.
we have Winter Field Day coming up this month at the end of January, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go out, we'll throw some antennas up in the trees and fire up our radios, and we'll make as many contacts as we can for 24 hours from 1 p.m. on Saturday till 1 p.m. on Sunday.
I'm going to guess I'm not the only person who doesn't really know what a ham radio looks like. I know it's not a piece of ham on a radio, so
No,
it's
no, it's and they've come along. I mean, they used to be really big, gigantic things with tubes, and nowadays they're digital. We can plug our radios into our computers and do logging.
hmm.
We can send email over the radio waves. We can do all kinds of things. But it's just a communication device,
Okay.
and we can tune in certain frequencies. For example, I was talking to a guy in Uruguay the other day. I've hit Estonia.
Jeez.
I hear a lot of contacts in Europe pretty frequently, all over the U.S., of course, Asia, and you never know. You start going and scanning through those bands, and you hear somebody and you call them, or you can just pick a frequency and start calling and say, "Hey, anybody out there?" And people will answer you. And
Hmm.
it's
So it's
amazing
almost
how many
like,
people.
wow.
Yeah,
It kind of sounds like a more easy to access Zoom where you just pick the country and you dial someone up.
yeah, well, and it's the tagline for amateur radio is when all else fails, because we do emergency services as well. When you hear
Mm-hmm.
about the Skywarn spotters, that's us. So
The
when the weather's
sky.
bad, yeah,
Okay.
when the weather's bad, we go out with our radios in our cars and we spot and we talk with the National Weather Service and let them know what we see.
Ah,
And then when Katrina hit, the only
yeah.
communication in and out of that area was ham radio.
Okay.
The earthquake that they just had in Japan, that whole area, the only communication they had in and out of that area was with ham radio. So we
I'm gonna have to
supply
look that up.
Yeah,
Wow.
we do community service as well. I've got an ARES team, which is Amateur Radio Emergency Services team. I've got 17 radio operators,
Oh my
and when
gosh.
we had the tornadoes come through at the beginning of December, we were out, communicating and relaying what we were seeing to the National Weather Service, and we provide a service that way. So ham radio is a great hobby. It's a lot of fun, and
I
it's
got it.
just and when you can talk to, I mean, I talk to people in Ukraine frequently, and it's one of those things.
And
It,
does it stand for something? Ham?
yeah, there's a lot of arguments about that, and I
Really?
haven't heard any explanations that make sense to me, so I'm going to say
Oh,
no.
okay.
I don't know why it's called ham radio, and there's a lot of theories out there, but
Huh. I just thought it was an acronym for something. I
but
don't
the
know.
official name is amateur radio. So
Okay. Yeah. That is really neat. And is that the same thing that's sometimes used in car races? Or
similar, but there's a different radios that they use and different
okay.
frequencies. But I also found out that my grandfather in World War II was a radio operator on the Navy ships, so he
Oh,
was a good ham
geez.
radio operator. And I just recently found that out. So
Oh my gosh. So it's genetic.
yeah, I guess it is.
Oh my God. Here's a really off the wall one for you. What do you wish more people knew about you?
Oh boy, that's an interesting question. I guess the thing boy, that's a tough one to answer, but I guess my message for the world is that, attitude is a choice. We've
Mhm.
got so much contention going on out there, and all of this could be just so much more. friendly and in the way we handle things. But if people just realize, and I didn't know this for years, I didn't realize it, but that's my message to the world. That's my passion, is to share that message to the world is, hey, no matter what is going on around you, no matter what the weather is doing, no matter what the government is or isn't doing, or what the
Yeah.
spouse is or isn't doing, or the boss or the co or whatever, it doesn't matter. You can choose your attitude in any situation. And by doing so, you will have such a profound effect on yourself and especially on those people around you. And I wish people would know that that's something that I can help them with
Hmm. You
as
actually
the
coach them on
therapist.
that?
Say that again.
Do you actually coach them on it?
Mhm, absolutely. And that's what my first book was about, The Art of Being Awesome. And there's just
That's
some
true.
some techniques here that you can use when you find yourself in a negative attitude. Take a look at, what are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you reading? Um, what's going on around you? What words are you using? What's your vocabulary? The words you use matter. Take a step back and ask questions like, what am I grateful for here? So, so that's what I am about, and that's what my first book was about.
It is so true that what you read, it just all of your environment so impacts you. Like I have to admit, I'm really not proud of this, but right, I checked out this book by Judy Blume. You probably do you remember the name Judy Blume, the author?
I heard that name, yeah.
It was for like fourth and fifth graders, and then she moved to adult books. And I remember hearing about reading a bunch of her books in grade school, and then there was one called Wifey, and I'd heard about it decades ago, and I really wanted to finally read it. It's not it's almost it ought to be considered historical fiction because it's written about the 60s, the 70s, and just really insightful about what life is like, even if you, so to speak, have it good or have a great life. That it's almost like a women's liberation book for women who aren't yet liberated to do what they want, or at least professionally.
Mhm.
And it's not that the woman in the book complained all the time, but she was not happy with the way things were. So she was, I guess, maybe complaining to her friends or just. And I'm thinking, I don't think I was all that positive this week. Granted, I did have a lot of extra things happening with concussion care, etc. But I thought, how different would your attitude be if you had been rereading something like The Magic of Thinking Big or one of Stevenson's books? You know what I mean? It just
Yeah.
it was really well written and it was a really juicy, interesting book. But I thought, is this serving you? And I thought it was good, and I'm glad it's done because it was really interesting, but it's no longer serving what I need. So I'm glad it's done.
I love the way you said that. Is this really serving me well? If we would ask that question more often, I think
Um,
that would eliminate a lot of pain in our lives.
yeah. So yeah, shout out to Judy Blume. It was a fabulous book. I just right now I need something different, so I'm glad I finished it. It was fantastic, and on to more brain building books. But now I understand women more who were in that era and
Mm.
understand why they stayed in situations that did not seem to serve them.
Yeah.
So there we have it. I've covered my butt. No, but I genuinely mean that there's a purpose for it. I just I'm ready to read something more brain building. Yeah.
Yes.
And if someone were to, I guess one more question, if you don't mind. If someone were to be a fly on your wall during the day, what kind of things would they be seeing? I mean, what's fit to print?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I like to keep busy, so they would see me doing a lot of things. Sometimes there's things on the computer, sometimes there's things around the house. I've got a little over 3 acres now with a garden, got fruit
Ooh.
trees, got grapes, got berries,
Oh,
plus just, mowing. I got about 2.5 acres to mow and just
wow.
taking care of the property. It takes a lot of time, but I'm
Yeah.
really enjoying it. Sometimes I might be, practicing magic tricks, and a lot of time I might be in there on the radio talking to people and who knows where. Sometimes I might just be kicked back watching YouTube videos. So every day is different. And that's one of the things I love is it's not the same routine over and over again. Sometimes I'm recording a podcast, sometimes I'm editing a podcast, sometimes I'm updating my website. So there's all kinds of things going. But I like staying busy, and you would see me being busy.
Wow. If is there something you'd like to promote?
Well, of course, the podcast. The podcast is called Are You Awesome Today? And it can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, or you can go to my website, which is awesomeattitude.net. You can find information about my books there. The first book is The Art of Being Awesome. The second book is called An Attitude of Service. I'm working on my third book. So you can find everything you need to know about me and my services and what I offer at awesomeattitude.net.
Is there anyone you're really, really hoping to do a podcast with who's been really hard to reach?
Not yet. I did have the opportunity to have Travis Ross back on. He is the inventor and founder of Hydro Flask, if you were
Okay.
familiar with the aluminum water bottles.
Oh,
And he was a fabulous guest. I was surprised. He actually reached out and questioned about the podcast, and we got together and had a great interview. He was fun. So I'd like to find more people like that, and I think they'll come when the timing is right.
oh yeah. That's so incredible. Stephen Chandler, thank you so very much. And I'm hoping the sound worked out well because, well, technology and I are sort of at battle most of the time. But it's still awesome. Are you awesome today? Let's say
I
the
am
trade.
awesome today, yes, and you are too. And if anybody says differently, they have to answer to me. So, but it's
Oh
been
my
my
God.
pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Lily.
How cool. Thank you, sir. We'll chat soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.
You too. Thank you for so much for tuning in for that interview with Stephen Shaner. How cool, right? I will link below in the description page his information, the podcast, the books, etc. That was so fun. Now, please send this link to someone you know who's interested in magic or in attitude related podcasts, or just get creative with who you send it to. Thanks.